joy is not a destination. Joy is a collection of things in the moment that we enjoy. And they can be big things and they can be little things. I like walking down the road and seeing pretty flowers, right? That makes me feel joyful. If I'm open enough to walk down the road with my dog and look around and go, the life is full of beauty. If I'm just focused on this destination, all of that becomes a blur and I can't accept it. And it's always about the destination. Then we get to the destination, we realize that that wasn't what happiness was. And we're like, I just wasted 20 years of my life.
Welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, where men go from good to great in their life and love. Now more than ever, our world needs strong, courageous, and compassionate men, because we believe that when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. Now, this movement is called Dad Nation, but ultimately this is for the wives, the children, and the generations to come, because we also believe that every wife and child deserves a father who is pursuing greatness. I am your host, Mitchell Osmond, and I am so grateful and I'm humbled that you've chosen to spend your most precious resource, which is your time, with me today. Listen, today we've got another incredible episode for you, so let's get into it. Well, welcome to the Dad Nation podcast. Today I have Lee Povey here with us. He's a high performance coach, and I'm going to let him talk about his journey, but I guarantee you this is going to be an impacting conversation for you today. So if you are a high performing man, a career driven man, business owner, you name it, we're going to have a great conversation today with Lee. So, hey, Lee, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
My pleasure, Mitchell. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's just jump in, because we've been burning through time trying to get linked up. It was my fault for you listening. Yeah, I just sent them the wrong link, and we went back and forth. Here we are. But Lee, why don't we just kick off the show, which is pretty normal for us here on the podcast, is just to tell us, because I know you have a remarkable story, man. And just in a couple of minutes, tell us a little bit about your upbringing and what kind of made you get into this industry of coaching high performers.
Yeah, thanks. So, how do I do this quickly? Son of a narcissistic sociopath. So my father had a horrible upbringing himself, and that created a man that just had no empathy or care for other people. So he walked through the world very destructive, womanizer, um, certainly not a good role model for me as a young man. And, as we're growing up, we look at our parents as what a man and woman should be if we're lucky enough to have a mum and a dad. And at a reasonably early age, early teenage years, I realized this is not who I want to be. Like, what he was role modeling to me was not what I wanted as a man. However, I didn't know what I did want. And I'm looking at the kind of stereotypical media representations of men. I'm like, that doesn't really fit for me, but I guess I'll try and be that. And eventually this led me to therapy as a young man in the UK, which was pretty unusual, and then to men's groups. And I got lucky enough to be in the company of wise, usually older other men, that I could learn from their stories, and I could learn from their feedback, and I could learn from their love and support. And it completely changed my relationships with men. I was good at having relationships with women. I was brought up by my mum and my auntie primarily. And then having these relationships with men on a completely different level really shifted how I was able to relate to men. And I was able to have the connection that I was looking for, but didn't know that I was looking for.
Mm. Wow. Wow. And thank you for sharing that about, your upbringing. And I know that, just our fathers, our relationships with our fathers are some of the most influential relationships, that we'll ever have. And, if you don't mind me asking, man, you mentioned that your father was sociopathic, narcissistic. That must have shaped your worldview. And so, how did that experience impact your sense of self and your relationships growing up?
To begin with, men were just vehicles to use to do things with. So I played sport with men, and I went nightclubbing with men to meet women. And my emotional needs, my love, all of that was taken care of by women. to a an unhealthy degree, to the point that when I was a young man and clubbing, if I didn't meet a woman and go home with her, I felt worthless and I felt like there was something wrong with me and I was broken and I was unlovable. And it also, trying to get that love from him. The only thing he paid any attention to was cycling because that was his sport. I was a county swimming champion, never once watched me swim. I played rugby for my school and I was the school captain. Never once watched me play rugby. Never come to, I did plays and stuff like that. And I think he came to one out of all the different stuff I did. So it doesn't matter how much I did to achieve, with the exception of cycling, he just wasn't interested. So there was this little kid, like all little kids, that is desperate to be acknowledged, seen, appreciated, loved. And while I got a ton of that from my mum and my auntie, I just got none of that from him. And
Mm,
it did made it very difficult to have relationships with men because I didn't know how to. I didn't have any kind of mentorship. And even now, I'm 52 and I still seek out mentors. I still want that love from older men and that reflection from older men. And also it's made me not want other men to have that experience. So one of the reasons I lead men's groups now, one of the reasons I turned into a cycling coach was because my first cycling coach was terrible. I didn't want other athletes to have that experience. And
mm,
one of the reasons I lead men's groups is because there's so many other men that have either had bad relationships with one or more of their parents or just not had support and love from other men. And I know how important that is and how it's utterly changed my life and how I want other people to experience that.
mm. That's powerful, man. Hey, I promise we're going to get back to this episode, but I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about a free marriage course that I'm offering, no charge, and it's called Remodel Your Marriage. And it's a 4-step blueprint to understanding your wife, keeping your cool, and getting the fire back in your marriage. And in this course, we're going to dig into the 4 foundations that every successful couple understands well. And that's number 1, how to love each other well. Number 2, how to feel and how to communicate how you feel, how to communicate through conflict. Number 3 is how to fight fair and how to fight well. And then number 4 is how to have fun and to break out of that routine of becoming just really great roommates. And so if you're watching this and maybe you would say that your marriage is feeling a little stale, maybe needs a little remodeling or refreshing, all you need to do is head to dadnationcode.com/remodel for that free course for you, my friend. I put a lot of time and energy into it, and I believe that it can help you transform your marriage. I believe in the marriage model. I believe in you and your marriage, my friend. All right, let's get back to the episode. We know that who we have in our circle determines our trajectory. We know that as men, so many of us are lone wolves, and we kind of take pride in that sometimes. Of like, now I got this, I got this unlocked. I'm gonna figure this out. I don't need anybody. Self-made, you name it. Um, why do you think, from your professional perspective, why do you think that we are this way, and why we do have the proclivity to lean into being alone and isolation?
Yeah. Great question. One of the social media posts I wrote about men's group was the way of or the time of the lone wolf is over. Human beings aren't designed to be by themselves. We are a collective and collaborative animal, and we need other people. And this is really borne out in the research. Lonely people live less. Um, they have more rates of incidence and have more rates of mental health issues. So we need other people. However, there's this myth portrayed in media of the strong, silent hero, which to me is immature masculinity. When we
Hmm.
look at masculinity, the popular phrase at the moment is toxic masculinity. I particularly don't like that phrase because it's shaming. I'd rather we looked at it as immature masculinity, which is it's more boyhood masculinity, which is the hero. And then you've got the adult masculinity, which is the king, which lifts other people up, where the hero is all the focus on him. So, I look at this and I think, how do we support young men and older men, because there's plenty of immature older men, to grow into this mature masculinity and let go of this belief that I have to do it by myself. I had an accident in 2010. I broke my shoulder very badly. And it was the first time in my life that I had to fully grapple with my own vulnerability. Up until then, I'd always been a high performer, incredibly capable, and I found it hard to ask for help because I had that self-judgment that many men do, that if I ask for help, I'm weak and I can't do it. And it's an absolute bullshit story. Like, there's just no truth in that. And, one of the phrases I hate is self-made person or self-made man, because there's no such thing. I work with billionaires. I work with founders that are creating incredible things. None of them are self-made. A bunch of people have helped them, support them, mentor them, coach them, including family members, including friends, including paid coaches and professionals. There's no one who's self-made. And if anybody tells you they are, they're lying and they're not recognizing the support that they've got in their life. Even just where you're born, right? You're born in Silicon Valley. That makes a difference. You're born to wealthy people, parents. That makes a difference. So I think there's this misconception added to men's drive, which is my value is in what I achieve.
Mm.
Women typically look at their lives with the value of their lives is the relationships that they create. And I'm broad strokes here, we're
Yeah.
not all the same. And men typically look at their lives with what have I done? Right? What is my sporting success? What is my business success? What have I achieved? And men need as much connection as women. And we just get taught out of that as young boys. It's like, no, go and do stuff. You got to be the provider. You got to be the hero. And we ignore the connection piece of it. And that's why suicide rates for middle-aged men are skyrocketing, because they're so lonely.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because I know you talk about loneliness, and mental health a lot, with specifically in men. Um, Now, a lot of my clients are similar situations. Senior leaders, CEOs, building businesses, and struggling in silence. Drinking themselves to sleep. Afraid to talk to their spouses, powerful at work, but come home and are powerless.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about mental health with men, um, where is that correlation? Like, why is it you think that there is such a surge in suicides and things like that with men? And maybe if there's someone who's listening today that might be, in a place where they're not feeling well mentally, what can they do?
Yeah. The first thing is find more community. It's that simple, really, for a lot of us. Find more community. And it's a very simple and easy thing for me to say. Just get more friends. Yet the statistics, the data shows this, that the more friends you have, the higher quality your life is, the happier you are, the longer you'll live, the healthier you are, both mentally and physically. And the issue there for many is how? How do I find more friends? And men are typically just not good at making friendships. My
Mhm.
wife will walk into the gym with me. She'll see somebody else in the gym. She'll go, "Oh, I love your workout gear," or "Oh, I love your hair," or whatever. And immediately they're talking and they've swapped Facebook or Instagram and they're messaging each other. I'm like, how the hell does that even happen? And as a guy, it's not as easy to go up to somebody and say, "Oh, I love the way you're squatting, bro." Immediately the other guy looks at you and go, "Are you hitting on me? You gay? Like, what's happening here?" And there's all
Mhm.
these stigmas attached to vulnerability for men. Don't be a pussy. Don't be weak. Don't say that you need help. And we get so much messaging early in our lives, even from our parents, of don't be weak. Men must be tough. Men must be responsible. And there's a difference between being responsible and motivated and self-reliant to also being in connection with other people, to also asking for help and support. Those things can exist together. They're not the opposite of each other.
Mm.
And that's something I'd really like men to hear. You can be self-reliant and ask other people for help. You can be tough and you can be a provider and ask other people for help or other people for support. And it's how we mix those things. And again, this is one of the reasons that I run men's groups, because it gives men an opportunity to sit with 8 or 9 other men who are going to listen to them without judgment. Because What's the one thing that men love to do? You tell them that you're feeling something, and they're like, let me fix that for you. Here's all the 10 things that you need to do. And most of the time, when somebody's sharing, they don't need to be fixed, they need to be heard.
Hmm.
The way that our brains work is when we're sharing something, we typically share it from the emotive part of our brain. So if I just do a quick bit of psychology, if you'll
Yeah.
indulge me, there's three areas of our brains to really, I mean, there's a lot more, but to really simplify it. There's the emotive, childlike part of our brain. That's the instinctual, that's the reactive part. Then there's the cognitive part of our brain. This is the conscious part. This is the executive functioning part. I like to think of this as the adult part of our brain. And then there's the computer part of our brain, which is where beliefs, memories, actions are stored. So some stimulus comes to us, we have an emotional reaction. Is this dangerous? Do I need to run away from it? Do I need to fight it? Do I need to play dead or do I need to feed it? So
Mhm.
fight, fright, freeze, or fawn. And then we have this reaction. And then what we have to do, or what I want us to do, is to move from that to the cognitive part of our brain. What are the choices I'd like to make instead? And when we're sharing something with somebody and we're emotive about it, we're feeling things, the cognitive part of our brain hears our childlike emotive brain sharing it and goes, oh, that's not as bad as I thought. Or, oh, I can see what I need to do now. This is why talk therapy, coaching, men's groups, an opportunity for you to talk and share is so important to people and helps them so much. And if you can have that space without somebody judging you and saying, this is what you need to do differently, or this is what you need to do to fix it, you learn to fix yourself, which is incredibly powerful and makes you a lot more resilient.
Mhm. Oh, it's powerful, man, and I've never quite heard, you know, that it broken down that way. I mean, I coach a lot and we talk a lot on the podcast about emotions and the prefrontal cortex and when that shuts off when you're in fight or flight and all that stuff. But the way you articulated the different functions of the brain and how they speak to one another in this context is fascinating.
Or don't speak to each other.
Or don't speak to each other. Exactly. Hey, we're going to get back to the episode, but while I have you here, I wanted to ask you, would you consider helping a brother who's struggling in his life right now? Maybe it's a guy searching the internet to help save his marriage, his health, or his family. Maybe it's a man that's just behind you on this journey. And we know, statistically speaking, there are thousands of men doing this, and we know that there are probably men in your social circles that are struggling with some of these very same things. If you'd be willing to help, this is how you can help, and I promise it'll take less than 60 seconds. If you've gotten any value from this podcast so far, would you be willing to give us an honest review and subscribe to our channel, whatever channel you're listening on? If you want to take this to the next level, would you consider sending this link to a friend of yours who you know would benefit from listening to this show? Now, why would you do that? Because the more men that hear this content, the more marriages we can save, the more fathers we can help step up, and the more lives that we can change forever. This isn't just for the men. This is for the wives, the children, and the generations to come. So I want to say thank you so much for doing your part to help other men find the support that they need. Now let's get back to it. And so what advice, in my experience, here's what I see. Um, Men go into business or they go into their careers, and then they get this mentality of like, I just got to put my head down for the next year or 2 years, grind it out, hustle it out. And then when I bring my head back up, look at me, and everyone's going to see this empire that I built, or this company that I built or whatever. And there is this sort of proclivity to respond and react that way. And unfortunately, a lot of guys don't make it to that end part. And when they do bring their head up, they've lost their family, or their wives have walked out, or they don't know their kids. And by the time they get to that point, it's too late. I had a conversation with a client the other day and I said, this is great, this wealth and this what you've accomplished. But what's the point if in a few months from now when we're sitting around the Christmas tree, you're gonna be alone, you know? Or you're gonna come home to an empty home. And so what when you think about a high performing man or a typical guy like we're talking about, what strategic, because we're all about strategy, right? Execution. From a business, from a practical standpoint, why should we be a part of community and reach out and really invest into friendships and relationships from a business kind of standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's a good question. If you want to look at this in a strategic way, you'll be a more effective leader if you are better rested, if you have friends in your life that you can go and spend time with and switch off, and if you have community that values you because you'll feel better about yourself. So you will just be more effective. If we put it into the model of my previous career as an elite sports coach, there is so much load of training that a human being can cope with before it starts to be destructive. You can't recover from it and your performance gets gradually worse. It's exactly the same for our brains. Like there's so much stress and mental load and work capacity that you can have, even for the hardest working, smartest person, before you start to actually get basically more stupid and to make more mistakes and to slow down.
Mm,
And knowing when to take some rest, when to recharge, when to be around the company of other people that hear you and make you feel good about yourself and support you and love you, that is what recharges human beings. Even the most introverted person, I'm fairly introverted. I have to be careful who I spend my energy with. Yeah, I know that doing things with other people will make me feel better. And if I spend too much time by myself, I'm my I think of it more as mental well-being and mental health because I think of it like on this scale that you can adjust. My well-being goes up when I spend time with people that I love and that love me.
mm,
So just purely from a strategy point of view, you've got to spend time around other people to be in a good position to be doing what you're doing well. And then the other part for me is, and I think you shared this so well, your question's so good. Men see it as a destination. When I get to this, life will be different. It won't. I'll tell you right now, guys, listening to this, that's not how the world works. Half of my clients are super bright young men who are starting out in their leadership journey and want to figure out what leadership is, and we work on who they are. And the other half of my clients are middle-aged men that have done it all, that are outwardly successful and are like you were saying, are lonely, their relationships probably failed, and they're trying to figure out what the hell their life is about. And it's because they think that happiness and fulfillment is this destination. If I have $1 million, I'll be happy. If I have $10 million, I'll be happy. If my business is worth $1 billion, I'll be happy. Yet we see these billionaires running around currently who are desperately unhappy, acting like children. So it's not about the achievement that brings you happiness. It's about connections, and the achievement brings you the fulfillment. And you've got to
mm,
add the two of them together. And for me, the best way to do that is instead of seeing it as a destination model, it's a journey model. What am I getting from today that fulfills me? What have I done today that makes me feel good? That makes you focus much more on the relationships and what you're doing right now rather than this far off destination that will never arrive.
mm. I love that. I love that, man. Yeah, I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about, and really what you're talking about is how we get caught chasing the carrot.
Yeah.
And I just said, man, we just need to less carrot, more stick. Like we need to just learn how to enjoy the journey. And it's not actually about the carrot at all. Let's get rid of the carrot because we're never going to get the carrot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
and it doesn't really exist. And if you mind me sharing a little bit about feelings, and joy, joy is not a destination. Joy is a collection of things in the moment that we enjoy. And they can be big things and they can be little things. I like walking down the road and seeing pretty flowers, right? That makes me feel joyful. If I'm open enough to walk down the road with my dog and look around and go, the life is full of beauty. If I'm just focused on this destination, all of that becomes a blur and I can't accept it. And it's always about the destination. Then we get to the destination, we realize that that wasn't what happiness was. And we're like, I just wasted 20 years of my life.
yeah. And I think, when we talk about achievements and I have this conversation with my clients all the time. We, get them to write a eulogy or we get them to do
Yeah, I
different
love that one.
things to tune them into the end so that they can become aware of like, hey, I don't want to miss I don't want to miss this life. I'm living in the moment. Like these are the good old days, as you've heard that, right? You are living in the days that you will want back. I was having a conversation with my wife. I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, but we were sitting out in the sun and my boy is like 16 months old, and we were getting frustrated because he was just being, a 16-month-old baby. Um, and I said to her, I was like, man, and I had this thought of like, when I'm 85 years old, I would be willing to trade every dollar, everything that I had to come back to this day, to relive it, to see him where he is right now. And there's this idea that, man, if we could only live with that urgency, if we could only live with that sense of presence, of like, I need to maximize this moment and fully slow it down. I mean, Brendan Burchard talks about this idea of slowing moments down and letting them swirl around you. And I thought, man, what a beautiful picture of what it looks like to be present. David Data from the book, The Way of the Superior Man, I think he calls it the great masculine error, is that one day, we all think that one day we're going to be able to sit back, sip a margarita with a little umbrella drink, and we're going to be good, you know? And man, is that so far from the truth? I love your perspective, man. And I love your perspective on, hey, I just enjoy going for a walk and looking at flowers. So just embrace that, and slow down and breathe and enjoy it. I did want to ask you a couple questions just about sort of your journey. And I forgot to ask this in the beginning, but when we had talked first, you had said you had struggled a bunch in school growing up. And then it was fairly recently that you were diagnosed with dyslexia. Is that correct?
Dyslexia and autism. So found out I was dyslexic 3, 4 years ago and autistic last year. And I've always known I've been a bit different. And I highly suspected I was dyslexic. I've had people tell me that my entire life. Like, there's definitely something different about the way that you process language, and struggling remembering names and writing things down wrong and stuff like that. And I can't spell anything. Like I really, and I forget words.
Hmm.
So, I forget a 4-letter word, and it's like there's 1,000 drawers at the back of my brain opening, trying to find the word, and it can't find it, and I'm just stuck.
Hmm.
So I knew that my brain worked a little bit differently. I didn't suspect I was autistic at all. Yet when I discovered that and read more about it and started to look into it more, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of sense in this. And my vision of autism was very different. The little kid that's got a crasher on his head and can't communicate, that's a type of autism. I have a high functioning type of autism that's completely different from that, but it does change the way I relate to people. And it's probably why I do the job that I do, because when I was growing up and I was younger, I didn't have the same ability to naturally know how I should behave compared to other people. So I've had to learn that, and I'm still learning that now. And what it made me was incredibly observant of human beings. So I've just spent my entire life watching other people and thinking, how do they behave and why are they behaving like that? And that has led to me doing the job that I do, because without realizing, I've spent my entire life training to understand human beings just so I can exist in the world and get by, literally just so that I can turn up. And now it's a superpower because I've spent more time studying human beings than almost anybody else, because every moment is, what does this interaction mean? Why are they doing this? Why are they saying this? But yeah, it made school very challenging for me. It wasn't, I loved the premise of school. I was very good at maths, physics, and chemistry, but I didn't know how to do homework. I didn't know how to work in school, and they had no idea. The messaging I got all the time was, you're exceptionally bright and you're lazy. And I'm not lazy. You couldn't do the things I've done in life, be an elite athlete, elite sports coach, an entrepreneur when you're lazy. Those two things don't go together. Those things don't go together. But that was a messaging I got, and it was pretty damaging to begin with because I kind of believed it.
Hey, real quick, we're going to get back to the episode, but I want to give you a free gift today. So if you're here and you're listening to this and you have been having a hard time in your marriage, maybe you and your wife just feel like really great roommates. You haven't had fun in a long time. You're just kind of getting caught up in chores and the to-do list and dropping the kids off and picking them up. I've got something called the Roommate Remedy, which is a free PDF. It's a guide for you. It's 113 ways to have fun with your wife and spark intimacy again. And this guide is going to teach you and your wife, they're going to give you a ton of different ways to have fun. So that's totally free for you. Listen, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to have the link in the comment section below. But if you're listening on audio, just hit up dadnationco.com/remedy for this free guide for you. Listen, I believe in the marriage model. I believe in you and your wife. You can do this. I'm rooting for you. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Hmm. Yeah, of course. Well, it's just it's wild, man. I mean, you were an Olympian, like a coach to Olympians and some of the top leaders and athletes, high performing athlete yourself, and to find out this late in life that you were on the autism spectrum and dyslexic. And so did that kind of shake you in your identity? I know with men, a lot of times when we experience these things, we're just a little shook, right? And it takes us some time to sort of recover. So what was that process like for you when you learned
Yeah.
that?
That's a great question. Thank you, mate. I think for me, actually, the opposite. It actually gave me some relief because instead of feeling like I was a bit broken, especially in the way that I formed relationships or some of the things that I would say to people in relationships that were damaging, now I understood why. I often have the conversation with my wife. My wife is a psychotherapist. Her makeup is that her job is to make sure everybody else is okay. That was her role in the family. That's how she lives in the world. Avoids confrontation and doesn't like upsetting people. I have no problem with confrontation. I don't like upsetting people. So I will get hurt and sad if the confrontation leaves the other person upset, and I care about my impact greatly. I like probably too much, but I kept having a poor impact and I couldn't understand why. And it was because to me, being direct, clear, truthful is number one. And I would put that above everything else. Like if somebody is saying something that's not true, I'm going to call that out. And what I've had to realize is sometimes that's not kind. And that's where I struggle because I care less about the kindness than I do about the correctness.
Hmm.
And I was working with a coach friend of mine, and she watched me giving feedback to other coaches as they were coaching. We're in this group and we coach and we give each other feedback. And she watched me do it. And she said afterwards, "You gave that person a lot of feedback. How I believe they received it was they're not very good." And I'm like, "That wasn't my intention." And she's like, "I know that. However, you weren't effective. So
Hmm.
what I want you to think about is instead of being correct, how can you be more effective?" And that was such a good switch for me because my wife's always like, "How can you be more kind?" And I'm like, I don't know if I really care that much about that. I care more about being correct than kind. I do care about being kind, but I care more about being correct. But the thing I care most about is being effective.
Hmm.
So that switch really helped me of how can I be more effective? And sometimes you need to be more kind to be more effective.
Wow. I love that. And what a concept. If you're listening and you're in a position of leadership or, well, in any, if you're married, if you're if you're a father, if you
Any
whatever.
relationship.
Yeah, pursuing effectiveness over being, correct or pursuing kindness over correctness. Yeah, brilliant. I mean, if you're not affecting people and impacting people, influencing people, you're not leading, right? And so you may
Can
be
I
correct.
pause you there? Because I want you to say that again, because I think that's a fucking fantastic line, Mitchell. Like, I think that really sums up leadership in a way that I've not quite heard it said before. I think that was awesome.
Yeah. Well, and that's how I define leadership as influence, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not moving people from point A to point B in whatever capacity it is, whether it's as a father, as a husband, as a employer, employee, then you're not leading. And you may be right, but no one's going anywhere with you on the
Yeah.
journey, right?
Yeah.
So that's yeah. Thanks for sharing, man. What a journey you've been on. That's powerful. And what a journey, you take other men on who are driven and motivated and high performing, and that's awesome. Now I want to speak to maybe people who are listening that might be feeling maybe they're hearing this and like, man, that's not my story. I don't have that crazy drive and that crazy purpose and that mission that I'm on fire about. I'm actually feeling kind of directionless or purposeless. What kind of advice would you give a man who's just kind of floundering right now and is looking for their mission or their purpose?
Yeah. Oh, what a wonderful question, and so relevant for the times we're in. You know,
Mhm.
we're seeing young men leaving college at half the rate of young women. We're seeing young men struggling to get into the workforce. We're seeing young men staying at home and living with their parents longer than young women. And I love the fact that young women are now doing so well, and we've done such a good job of elevating them in the workforce and in the education system. And unfortunately, what's happened is we've kind of missed young men because they had the privilege before, and now we've kind of missed them and gone, well, how do we meet you? Part of the problem for young men is we're much more addictive. So we get addicted to porn, we get addicted to gaming, we get addicted to drugs, and that gets in the way of us finding our purpose because it uses all of our energy system. Our dopamine is our actual motivation energy system. And if we're using all that up, that gets in the way. So the first thing is I'd say, look in your life and kind of clean it up a bit. If there's something that you're addicted to, work on stepping away from that so that you can give yourself room and energy to find what your purpose may be. The
Mm,
next thing is surround yourself with people who you will want to be around and who make you feel good about yourself and who see the best in you and can reflect, hey, here's some opportunities for you.
mm,
There's no way I would have made it where I am without having smart friends who say, here's an opportunity for you, Lee, or Lee, I think you're really good at this. Have you thought about trying this? Even coaching. I had a friend who sent me a podcast about a leadership coach. This was when I was still a sports coach. And I heard this podcast, didn't know leadership coaching existed, listened to it. I was like, this is interesting. I could see myself doing this at some point. 3 months later, COVID happened. The national team program closed down. I didn't have a job anymore. And I was watching Billions with my wife, and I said, "Hey, I'd heard about this leadership thing. There's a leadership coach in the TV series Billions." She looked at it and went, "That's it. That's what you should be doing." So I think as young men, or even older men that are struggling with their purpose, you've got to look around and kind of open your eyes up to what else could there be? What interests me? And then you've got to put yourself in situations where that can get reflected to you.
mm,
I'm a big proponent for men's groups, been incredible for me. So that's one avenue I think where you can go. Men are gonna love you and then challenge you with like, what do you want to do with your life? A big part of our men's groups is we check in how we're feeling, what we're up to, and then we have this accountability piece of, do you want to hold yourself accountable for something? And it's an opportunity for men to say, here's something I want to do. And it can be as simple as, I want to go to the gym 3 times a week. But you're declaring that to other men, and then you're going to check in next week, and one of the guys is going to go, how are the gym sessions? And just that alone elevates us, and that gives us some purpose because we don't want to let the other people down as much as we don't want to let ourselves down. So I think putting yourself around people that you admire, that are doing things that you admire, that are hopefully just a level above you. Don't if you're struggling for purpose, don't go and try and surround yourself with a bunch of super high performing guys that are just going to intimidate the crap out of you and you're going to feel worthless. But go and find some guys that are kind of a little bit further along the journey than you and who are going to help you. I know in my life, there's nothing more flattering for me when somebody says, can you give me a bit of support or can you give me a bit of feedback or a bit of mentorship on this? And I think most men want to hear that from somebody and want to step into that position for younger men.
Mhm. Yeah, and actually I had this conversation with a client yesterday, and you're exactly right. I had said, have you ever had anyone ask you for advice?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "How did that feel?" He said, "It felt great." I said, "Did you feel like, man, that guy's such a pain in the neck? Why is he?" He said, "No, I had reached out and I was like, hey, man, would love to help." I said, "Well, that's how people ahead of you think when you reach out to them. And so reach up, to people who are a few steps ahead because you're not an inconvenience. It's the people ahead of you that are going to be cheerleading you. It's only the people that are behind you that are going to be pulling you back. So I agree 100%. I think that's powerful. Um, I know we just have I wanna give people an opportunity to find out where they can find you and all that stuff, but, just before we get to that last question, I did have one second last question, I guess, if you will, in
The
the show.
penultimate.
And I ask this question to every guest on the show, and I know you're gonna like it. It's a little morbid, but I'm gonna get you to think about your death for a moment. I'm sure you probably already have thought about this often if you're anything like me. But I want you to picture, you had passed away, and the memorial service is over. Everyone has just left, and your wife is sitting around the table, and she's thinking about Lee, the husband you were, the the coach you were, the business person you were. All those different things about what made up your life. And you have the opportunity to be a bit of a fly on the wall, and you could actually kind of hear some of the things that maybe she's sitting with her family and she's telling stories and just speaking about who you were. What are one or two things that you would want her to say about the husband you were and the man that you were while you were here with her on this earth?
Oh, what a great setup as well. Thank you, Mitchell. Such a great picture. Um, it's interesting, isn't it? Part of me wants to go, oh, I want my wife to say how smart and brilliant I was. I don't. That's the little boy in me that wants to be the hero. The adult man in me is like, I would like my wife to talk about the impact that I had,
Hmm.
how kind I was, and how everybody that encountered me left that encounter with me in some way a better person than they found me.
Hmm.
And I think that's my life's true purpose is to, whether it's a system, whether it's a person, whether it's an organization, whatever I get involved with, it leaves the experience better because I was part of that experience with them.
Hmm.
And I genuinely believe that's what I've created so far in my life, and I want more of it. I want to be able to have more impact so that other people can be more successful, fulfilled, joyful, enlightened. So I would hope that my wife sits there and recounts the ways that I have changed people's lives. And funny enough, I kind of had that experience. So for my 50th birthday, my wife got a bunch of my friends together and some of the old athletes I'd worked with. And she did this exercise where she went around the table and she said, "What does Lee mean to you?"
Hmm.
And almost everybody had a story about where I'd done something with them or had repeated something with them that had changed their life in some meaningful way. And for somebody who struggles to hear appreciation, it was both utterly overwhelming. Like I had to sit there and listen to all of these people say really lovely things about me, and unbelievably enriching.
Hmm.
So that's what I hope would happen. And I hope my wife would be happy and she
Hmm.
would sit there and go, I'm glad that I had to have that experience with him. And I would hope that she would also be excited about whatever would be next for her.
Hmm. Powerful. Powerful. Man, that's legacy, serving others powerfully. Leaving, with the dent you made in your life on this earth, um, just spending your life lifting others up. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing, brother. Last question for you, man, is I know that there's a lot of people who listen to the show that are, all the different things we've talked about, whether they're high performers or whether they're, currently in a season of struggle. Obviously the vast majority of people who are listening are men. And so if guys are listening today and they want to get in touch with you or learn more about you or your services, programs, whatever the case is, where can they find you?
I like to make things super simple, Mitchell. So if you Google Lee Povey, you will find me. My website is leepovey.com. I'm Lee Povey on every social media. So I'm very easy to find. And my name is unique enough that I'll come up on the first page of Google. So just Google Lee Povey, you'll find me. I would like to share with your listeners, there is nothing weak or wrong or unmasculine about seeking support, seeking connection. And I particularly like what you said with your client about what does it feel like when somebody asks you for help and support? Give that gift to somebody else. It is a gift as a man to ask another man for support and help. That person you are asking is only going to feel enriched and privileged that they get asked to support you, and you are going to benefit from it. So, my challenge to everybody listening is go and ask more people for support, leadership, and mentorship.
Hmm. Love that. I love that. Well, hey, thank you, Lee, just for spending this time with us today. Really appreciate your time, and you just brought so much value and so many things to consider for every man who's listening. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you shared today, and I look forward to having another conversation with you one day down the road.
My pleasure, Mitchell. And I feel a bit weird to say, but I'm proud of the work that you're doing. And I
Hmm.
love that you're doing this. And I love that the title of the show, this is for dads. My whole reason for where I am now was because I didn't want to be like my dad. That was the original motivator. Now, obviously, it's shifted to having a positive impact. But I started everything, therapy, men's groups, because I didn't want to repeat the crappy behavior of my dad. So I love that you are out in the world having that impact, allowing men to be better men and to be better fathers, because that ripple effect is huge.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. And I resonate with that. That was much of my mission as well. So let's keep doing the good work.
Wow, what an incredible episode. Listen, if you are watching on YouTube today, I want to hear from you, okay? Leave it in the comments below. What was the big takeaway for you? What was that big aha moment? And let's start the conversation. If you've listened to this episode and you've decided that you want help today, if you need coaching, if you need some resources, feel free to please reach out to me. My email is mitchell@dadnationcode.com. My website is dadnationcode.com. You can hit me up on Instagram @dadnationco. And I've got a ton of resources for you. I'm here to help you, support you in any way I can, and to serve you in a powerful way. So check those links. I'll have them posted below. But other than that, listen, I'm here for you. I'm in your corner. Have an incredible week. We'll catch up soon.